Hey, I'm Courtney Thomas, and today I want to talk about thoughts. Get it? Talk about thoughts. We don't always do that, right? So, first of all, do you have any idea how many thoughts that you normally have? Like, say in a day, how many thoughts do you think you have? Well, a somewhat recent study just came out, and it shows us that human beings have more than 6,000 thoughts a day. More than 6,000 thoughts a day. Is that not wild? Like, even if you take that over the course of 24 waking hours, it's somewhere around like 4 thoughts a minute. 4 separate thoughts a minute. Not just like one thought about cake, like I normally have, but like 4 separate thoughts a minute. Now, we're not awake for 24 hours. So, in say, 16 hours of waking, 12 or 16 hours of wake, 6 thoughts a minute is like really where you can go with this. 6 thoughts per minute. Now, what's really, really interesting about this is that we also know that most of our thoughts tend to skew negative. And negative can be interpreted a lot of different ways, but you kind of get the gist, right? And what's really interesting about that is we know a little bit more about what that means and how that affects us. Namely, how we think, our thoughts, the thoughts that we have, they affect our physiology. So when you think about that, if you have 6,200 thoughts a day, and most of them skew negative, and we know that affects our physiology, how we feel, how we live in life, how we show up, how do you think you're feeling, living, and showing up? Some really interesting data and a really interesting conversation to have, talk out loud, and also, again, to think about. You might be having one massive thought about this idea that wow, how I think affects how I live. And that right there is true. So, we often say things and hear things in our world your words matter, language matters, things like that. And I would argue that this is an extension of that, right? Like your thoughts matter. What you are thinking matters. Each of those separate 4 thoughts a day, the 6,000 thoughts that you have each day, it literally affects everything about who you are and how you live. So, what does that mean? Like that matters a lot, but what does that mean? Obviously that it's important to be thinking about our thinking. And, not to go as far kind of down the road in, psychology is like metacognition and all that kind of stuff. But, a simpler, a bit more simplistic version of that kind of concept that often comes up with my clients is basically like, become more aware of your thoughts. We know this matters and we know why. So what do you do with that? Without having to go way, way off into a huge, years long process of, learning how to work with your thoughts, do the step one version of that. Become more aware of your thoughts, what you're thinking, and then choose. I have talked about choice consistently and, at length and in so many different ways and applications over the course of the past several years. And it applies here too. Not only can you choose your thought, but you can choose what to do with it. If the first bit is just thinking about what you're thinking, seeing what you're thinking, the idea is once you see it, then you can decide what to do with it, right? You can continue to think that thought. You can embrace it. You can hold it. You can pause with it. You can totally let it go. You can change it. You can retell it. You can reframe it. You can discard it. You can do all kinds of things with your thoughts once you see them. And those choices, those are going to start to skew, be the thing, the action that skews all that negative majority of your 6,000 thoughts a day that affect your being toward a bit more positive. And again, interpret positive however feels right for you. I'm not saying everything is sunshine and rainbows, love and light thinking. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying more self-confident thoughts, self-compassionate thoughts, thoughts that stand firmly in a self-image without negative or external judgment, right? Like that's what I mean when I say positive. All of those things, again, affect your physiology in a whole different way than constantly like kind of hating on yourself and saying mean things to yourself and, stuff like that, kind of getting caught in that negative thought spiral. A client of mine that I was just working with on this, this inner dialogue work, she said to me after kind of working through some of this awareness, and again, like understanding, like, first of all, once you're aware of what your inner dialogue is and where your thoughts are at, then you can really start to see that you have the choice, right? Like that's kind of the next step in between the choosing, right? But what she got out of it in our work with inner dialogue, with thinking about your thoughts, she said, okay, sometimes, you have that day and like one thing goes wrong, you can't stop thinking about it. Like all that negative chatter inside of your head, just negative self-talk all day long. Like it just keeps going and going and going, right? And she said, you know what? Like I have just come to see through this, kind of recent reflection work that like one moment in time doesn't decide your whole being. And again, that's true, right? And it's kind of like, take that and apply it to the 6,000 thoughts a day, right? Like one negative thought does not have to affect them all. It doesn't have to be that your inner dialogue for the whole day is junk. It's just one thought out of 6,200 or one thought out of 4 in a minute. Build on it however you would like. So essentially the question becomes like, okay, we know this matters. We know why. We know a little bit about how to work with this. So then what do you want to do with your 6,000 thoughts a day? What are you going to do with your 6,000 thoughts a day? It's a really, really powerful conversation, right? You really, like, this is your inner dialogue. These are your thoughts. So only you have the power. It's a powerful thought, and ultimately it's your power. So how are you going to use it? What are you going to do with those 6,000 thoughts today?